Oathbreaker is a 60 card format quite similar to Commander. Instead of choosing a legendary creature like in Commander, you choose a Planeswalker to serve as your Oathbreaker, and alongside of that Planeswalker, you get to choose an instant or sorcery, which will serve as their signature spell. That spell may only be cast while you control your Oathbreaker, and just like in Commander, both your Oathbreaker and signature spell will each cost 2 generic mana more for each subsequent time you have to cast them from your command zone. The remainder of your deck is 58 cards, within the color identity set forth by your Oathbreaker. There is a list of cards banned in the format, which I will of course link to in the description of this video. Your life total begins at 20, and it is a multiplayer format. In this video, I want to talk about my personal favorite Oathbreaker deck. Professor Onyx is a 5 loyalty planeswalker for 4 generic and 2 black. She is technically a Liliana planeswalker, Professor Onyx being an alias used by Liliana while she sought refuge on Strixhaven after the War of the Spark. She has Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 2 life and we gain 2 life. She has 3 abilities. Her +1 makes you lose 1 life, and then you look at the top 3 cards of your library. You choose one of them to go to your hand, and then the rest to the graveyard. She has a -3. Each opponent must sacrifice a creature with the greatest power among the creatures that player controls. Her -8. Each opponent may discard a card, and if they choose not to, they lose 3 life. You then repeat this process 6 more times. Professor Onyx is able to generate a tremendous amount of value just on her own. Her first ability will generate us hand advantage, and we do run a few select reanimation spells in the deck in order to get back some of the cards that we might not have added to our hand. Her second is a potent edict effect that will clear the field of 3 of the biggest threats on the field. Her ultimate is pretty brutal, forcing opponents to discard a card or lose 3 life, and then considering that Oathbreaker game start at 20 life, having to repeat this process 6 times can make an opponent lose up to 18 life, making games go much quicker. Her signature spell is Chain of Smog, a sorcery for 1 and 1 black that reads, target player discards 2 cards from their hand. That player may then copy this spell and choose a new target for the copy. This is a win condition in the command zone, as we will of course need Professor Onyx in play to cast this to begin with. When we cast it, we will of course target ourselves, forcing ourselves to discard 2 cards even if we do not have the 2 cards in our hand to discard. We can then target ourselves to copy the spell, which we will then repeat this process until the table is dead. This is because of Professor Onyx's Magecraft ability, which will shock each opponent and gain us 2 life each time we cast or copy a spell. Considering that we will be copying Chain of Smog as many times as we need to win, this will win us the game. Now, the biggest obstacle to this deck going off is that our Oathbreaker costs 6 mana, our signature spell 2. We need a total of 8 mana, and so we need quite a bit to get those numbers up, and so we do run a number of spells aimed to get us the most amount of black mana. Blood Pet is 1 black mana for a 1/1 throw. We can sacrifice it to add 1 black mana to our mana pool. This is a great first turn spell, as it'll be able to be sacrificed later on for more black mana. Overeager Apprentice is 2 and a black for a 1/2 human minion. You can discard a card and sacrifice the apprentice to add 3 to your mana pool. This is another mana investment that we can utilize later on, and you'll see quite a few cards follow this same sort of system. Next is Priest of Gix, a 2/1 human cleric minion for 2 and a black, and when it enters the battlefield, we will add 3 black to our mana pool. Another short-term investment of mana. Scourge Familiar is a 3/2 Phyrexian Imp for 4 and a black with flying. You could discard a card to add a black to your mana pool. This can be done several times, and so if we have cards in our hand but need a little more mana to go off, this is a great trade-in. Soldaviadne is 1 and 1 black for a 1/2 cleric. You can tap it and sacrifice either a black or artifact creature you control, and then add black mana equal to the sacrificed permanent's mana value. Bubbling Muck is a 1 black mana sorcery that lets your swamps tap for an additional black mana. This doubles the mana that we get out of our swamps and can help us really speed things up. Dark Petition is 3 and 2 black for a sorcery that lets you tutor a card to your hand, but the value comes in the Spell Mastery trigger. So as long as you have 2 or more instants or sorceries in your graveyard, you actually get 3 black mana to your pool at the very end. This can then, in theory, be another demonic tutor ability. Cable Ritual is 1 and 1 black for an instant that adds 3 black to our mana pool, but if we control 7 or more cards in the graveyard, you can then add 5 black mana instead. This is tremendous mana ramp, and considering that cards like Soul Ring and Dark Ritual are both banned in the format, this is perhaps one of the best ramp spells we have access to. Culling the Weak lets us pay 1 black, sacrifice a creature to add 4 black to our pool. It's another all-star that can help us reach that 6 mana to play Professor Onyx. Reign of Filth is 1 black for an instant that gives our lands the ability to sacrifice that land to add 1 black to our mana pool. This is a great way to go all in on winning on the turn that we're playing this. You resolve this spell, tap your lands for mana and then sacrifice them to get the additional black and then push for the win. Finally, sacrifice is about the most basic ramp that we have. We pay 1 black mana for an instant that sacrifices a creature to add black mana to our mana pool equal to that creature's mana value. We of course have our selection of mana rocks in the deck. The ones that we are able to run, we're running the best of them. Arcane Signet, Basalt Monolith, Chrome Mox, Felwar Stone, Grim Monolith, Jet Medallion, Lotus Petal, Mind Stone, and Mox Diamond. This deck also contains a card draw engine that I'm adopting from my Keurig deck, Vilis Broker of Blood. This 8/8 demon costs 5 and 3 black and has flying. You can pay 1 black and 2 life to give a target creature -1/-1 until end of turn. We also have a triggered ability where wherever we lose life, we draw that many cards. Normally, 8 mana would take a hot minute to reach an Oathbreaker, though we do have some sneaky ways of cheating in Vilis. They are Entomb and Reanimate. Both are 1 black mana each. Entomb would let us send Vilis to the graveyard from our library. Reanimate lets us put Vilis from the graveyard into the battlefield, and then we lose life equal to his mana value. Because Vilis will see that 8 life lost from Reanimate, we then draw 8 cards. 2 black mana to get us an 8/8 that also doubles as a card draw engine is pretty decent, and because opponents will be swinging at us, their damage will be converted into card draw. We do also have Animate Dead, Dance of the Dead, and Necromancy as additional reanimation spells should we need them. We also have some defensive cards aimed at slowing down our opponents, and I wouldn't call them stacks pieces, though they do serve a familiar role to them. These interactive spells are aimed at disruption, holding our opponents off their ability to go off. Murderous Rider is an adventure spell from Eldraine. The adventure part costs 1 and 2 black for an instant that destroys target creature or planeswalker, and then we lose 2 life. We can then recast it for 1 and 2 black for a 2/3 zombie knight with lifelink. When it dies, it goes to the bottom of our library. This is an excellent way to deal with opponents' Oathbreakers, and because it can go to the bottom of our library, we get to reuse it a few additional times. Vampire Hexmage is 2 black mana for a 2/1 Vampire Shaman with First Strike. You could sacrifice the Hexmage to remove all counters from target permanent. Loyalty counters are technically counters that can be removed with the Hexmage, and so if the opponent's about to ult their Oathbreaker, we can get it off the field with this. Baleful Mastery is 3 and a black for an instant that exiles target creature or planeswalker. You can also pay 1 and 1 black as an alternate casting cost, but if you do, an opponent gets to draw a card. Do note that the opponent drawing the card need not be the opponents whose card you exile. Again, we're on some very versatile removal that can deal with both the Oathbreakers and the problematic creatures. We also have Defense Grid. This 2-mana artifact makes each spell cost 3 generic more to cast except during its controller's turn. See, this deck is modeled highly after my beloved Keurig Son of Yawgmoth CEDH deck, and Defense Grid is an excellent way to keep opponents off our lawn during our turns. If we're about to go off, it's perfect to have in play to protect our spells from any and all interaction. We have the Elder Spell. This is an amazing card in Oathbreaker, as every opponent will have a Planeswalker in play at some point. For 2 black mana, you can destroy any number of target Planeswalkers, and then we choose Professor Onyx to give her 2 loyalty counters for each destroyed this way. This is an excellent way to boost her up to her ult, and should we have been locked out of our Chain of Smog combo, her ultimate can technically win games as well, or put us in a position where we'll be easily able to win. We also have Duress and Thoughtseize. If we know or expect something is being held up in an opponent's hand, we can play these as very cheap discard spells to just pick off those kinds of spells. One final win condition, and in there really only to clean up should we be locked out of our Oathbreaker and main win line, is Grey Merchant of Asphodel. This 2/4 zombie costs 3 and 2 black. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X life, where X is the devotion we have to black. We gain life equal to the amount of life lost this way. This should be able to clean up if we haven't yet won the game, but if we do need a few more instances of this, we can always use something like Saw in Half to really close out the round. Saw in Half costs 2 and a black for an instant. It destroys target creature, and then if a creature dies this way, we create 2 tokens that are copies of that creature, except its power and toughness are both halved. This gives us 2 more instances of the Grey Merchant's ETB ability, and should earn us the win. If you're a fan of mono black lists, this is a great Oathbreaker deck for you to try out to get into the format. I actually built this myself after getting my Keurig deck finalized, and so a lot of the main strategy for this deck originated and exists in Keurig. It's fun, it's fast, and it's consistent. Now for the full deck list of this build, you can check out the Moxfield link in the description below. Let me know if you'd like to see more Oathbreaker decks on this channel. I have a few more that I would happily cover. If you did enjoy this video, likes and shares are always graciously appreciated. If you're part of that 95% of my audience that YouTube keeps claiming isn't subscribed to my channel, feel free to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to fix it so you never miss an upload. And as always, thank you for stopping by, and I'll catch you all next time.